Shalom, everyone. In the Nazarene, that's what we're called. There's something for the masses to see, and then there's something for the initiated to see. It's the darkness hiding in open view. We call them Wiccans, witches, warlocks, wizards, shamans. That's what they go by. It's poison doctrine. Hi, everybody. My name is Lew White, and I'm with Torah Institute here in Louisville, Kentucky. And I wanted to point out before I started this lecture or this seminar on this subject, the Sabbath Breach, by mentioning a new word to you that you've probably heard as an old word. And actually, the microphone's a little bit loud in there. Could you turn it down just like one notch, Adam? Like one slight degree? It's about to feed back. So anyway, the idea of changing the words of Yahuwah is what he calls Wormwood, which is, we had a seminar on Wormwood, as some of you might recall. You should look it up and watch it, but on YouTube or whatever. But anyway, Wormwood is the result. It's a bitter thing that results from having changed the words of Yahuwah. Now, what we're going to see today is a presentation that shows an illustration clearly that the words of Yahuwah have been changed, altered. Now, that's Wormwood. Now, it does say in Proverbs 28, verse 9, that he who turns his ear away from hearing the Torah, now the Torah, it means instructions, even his prayer is an abomination. Now, either that's true or it's not true. Now, we're going to look at another thing too before I do this. This is all a kind of a foreword or a preface to this whole concept. The word that we understand that a lot of people end prayers with, like it's a Hebrew word, and it's probably more accurately pronounced Amin. It's 3 Hebrew letters. And you know, Hebrew words are simple concepts. They have a concrete meaning and they have an abstract meaning a lot of times. And the 3 letters that are in this word, Aleph, Mem, Nun, actually mean things, and they give meaning to the word itself. The first letter is Aleph, and it means something that means strong or strength. And Mem means waters. And Nun means fish. That's interesting. Strong waters and the word fish. So that gives you the idea of something that is really determined, something that is sure of its purpose. And it's swimming up against the power of the water. And it's really going to overcome. It's an overcoming thing. But the word itself in the Hebrew is taken to be an affirmative word. It's a word of affirmation, and it means something like truly. And you lift your voice up when you say this word. Amen. You know, it's something that's powerful. And you stand by it. Now, as we've inherited the word, though, it sort of sounds religious and kind of heavenly. But actually, it's powerful. And that meaning in that word, truly, absolutely, it's what we say today, absolutely. Well, let's bear that thought in mind throughout this whole deal. Now, something is either true or it's not. Yahusha always would open up some of his discussions saying, truly, truly. In other words, I'm trying to get your attention here, you know. And that was not an ending, that was an opening statement. You know, we don't know that because we've been looking at translations. But anyway, the thing of it is, it's, the fact is that Yahuwah, when he awakened me and he awakened you to a calling, he did so with all the prophets and the people that were given a mission. And Yahuwah sends them after he calls them. He prepares them. He calls them and prepares them, and then he sends them. Now, who does he send them to? Mostly the lost. And there was one prophet that I want to bring up a lot today, and his name is Isaiah to the rest of the world, but notice the I-A-H at the end of his name, Yah. It actually is Yeshayahu, which means salvation is of our Yah. or Yahoo is our salvation, But Yeshayahu, that prophet, was called. And in chapter 58, verse 1, he's commanded to lift up his voice like a trumpet and declare to his people their transgression. So we're going to do a little of that today. Now, in the year of 1947, there was a huge discovery made in the caves around Qumran, and one of the biggest treasures that was found there was the Great Scroll of Yeshayahu. And they presented this thing today in a huge dome, or it's kind of a jar lid. It's called the Hekel Sefer in Israel, but it's the shrine of the book. And this is the big centerpiece, is this long scroll of Yeshayahu, Isaiah. It's called the Great Isaiah Scroll. And the original name is written in there in Paleo-Hebrew. They're not using hieroglyphics. They're using the Phoenician alphabet, as they call it today, but it's actually the ancient Hebrew. And anyway, early in his writings, Yeshayahu is presented with a vision in his calling. And he sees Yahuwah high and lifted up. And his esteem is filling the temple. And he is freaked out. He says, "Woe is me. I am a man of unclean lips, and I have seen Yahuwah. And I live among a people of unclean lips." Now, the voice of Yahuwah speaks just as speaking, and Yeshayahu is hearing it, and he says, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" Now, that was one of the first things that awakened me. That was a calling to me. Who will go for us? Well, I responded too, like the prophet. The prophet said, "Here I am, send me." And at the time, I was working in a pretty scary place where I still work. And I really can't possibly stop because of the fact that the lost are there. And the lost are everywhere. They're lost in the steeples too. But they don't know it, and that's what we're going to point out today. Now, at some point in the future, the work that people like us have been doing in the world, revealing the truth and people converting and receiving the Spirit of Yahushua within their vessels in order to be saved and accepting the atoning blood of the Messiah upon their hearts, they're going to be standing in the presence of the Creator, Yahushua, and he's going to ask them, probably, was it worth it? Yeshayahu was sawn in half as a result of his work. They cut him in half. Well, some of us are stoned with words. That's okay. But when the Messiah asks us, look around you, do you see these people that are wearing the white robes? Was it worth it? And we're going to say, absolutely. And Yeshayahu will be standing there nodding his head saying, absolutely, it was worth it. He was sawn in half. Well, we're going to jump right into this now. And we're going to start with the concept of a word that you've all heard, Sabbath. And I want to start with a quote from Soren Kierkegaard. Okay. Sounds like a Danish guy, and that's what he is. He's Danish. He doesn't live anymore. He lived in the early part of the 1800s, but he wrote a book called Purity of Heart. And in that book, he said something about the truth. The larger the crowd, the more probable that which it praises is folly. And the more improbable that it is truth. And the most improbable of all, that it is any eternal truth. So the larger the crowd, the more improbable that they have any eternal truth at all. Now, from where comes the Protestants' behavior, the Protestants that we call the non-Catholics or the people that are in the denominations? Well, they get their behavior from their mother. Now, who's their mother? Well, let's look at some of the things that we're going to reveal here. Now, is missing Sunday Mass a mortal sin? Every Catholic will tell you absolutely. I mean, the requirement to attend Mass on Sunday and other holy days of obligation, rooted in the third commandment and codified in circus law, is a serious obligation for all Catholics. A Catholic who is able to attend Sunday Mass knows the seriousness of this requirement and nonetheless freely chooses to miss Mass, thereby commits a mortal sin. Now, they don't know what the third commandment is, first of all. The Catholics think that that's remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's what they think. But we're going to look at the commandments and see if anybody's altered them. All right? They actually did change it because they wiped out the second commandment and they turned it into nothing because they bow to images, right? They light candles and they bow to images and they make images for worship. And that's what they are. They're for veneration. That's what veneration means, worship, to serve. Now, they had to take the 10th commandment and make it into 2 commandments in order to keep 10. Now, they say that eating meat on the fish day, which is the 6th day of the week, is also a mortal sin. They say eating swine flesh anytime is okay. Now, is that head through the wall folly or what? Is it truth? See, based on what our man up there said, it's more likely that it's folly. So we hear here a dispute between men's dialogue and Yahuwah's eternal words. So now, the Sabbath day, what is the everlasting covenant? Well, actually, if you look, it's very easy to find. The everlasting covenant is basically the 10 words, the 10 commandments. But what is the sign of that covenant? And it's given in Ezekiel, as the Ezekiel 20, as being the sign of the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is the 7th day of the week. Who would change that? It says that Yahusha is the master of the Sabbath. So, that's an interesting thing because he is the creator. So the creator and his Sabbath is linked together. By observing it, we identify Yahuwah as the creator, thereby showing love for our creator. Because it's the covenant that teaches us how to love. It's called the covenant of love. Now, let's look at these terms real quickly. These are the traditional terms on the left that you've inherited, and on the right is the authentic Hebrew terms. We have Lord, which is an English term that translates back to Hebrew as B-A-A-L. That means Lord too. There is no name given for the Creator except that one. Somebody's altered the words and the meaning because it's misdirecting the worship. And J-E-S-U-S is a very, very modern form. And to say it out loud in the way it was inherited from the Greek, it's Jesus. Now, the real name written in Scripture is 5 letters for the most part. It's Yod, He, Ua, Shin, Ayin, and it's Yahusha. It can be uttered as Yahushua or Yeshua as a shorter form, like shortening Michael down to Mike. Now, Christos is a Greek word, so we don't really need a lot of Greek, so we're going to use the word Mashiach or Messiah, which is a close rendering of it. And G-O-D is not a proper thing to call him because that's a reference or a pronoun, but it's from a Norse deity's proper name. And the Jews we're going to refer to as Yahudim. And Christians is not really what we were called, even though it is used twice in all of the Messianic scriptures. It is actually the word Nazarene. His first followers were Nazarene, the branches, the watchmen, the guardians. If you just look at the prophecies of us, you see us. Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah 31, verse 6. And look closely at Acts 24, verse 5. Now, Yisrael is the bride, the wife of Yahuwah. And we're here to restore these truths as Nazarene. Now, why will the earth be burned? Everybody knows that something's going to happen, and will you be here or will you not be here? Actually, you will, because Psalm 91 describes it, and many of the prophecies and the texts will reveal that the first thing to be taken out of the earth will be the weeds, not the wheat. The wheat will be there too, and then they will be gathered. But Yeshayahu, the man we talked about that was sawn in half, that'll be asked the question, was it worth it? Well, in chapter 24, verses 5 and 6, Yahuwah is speaking through him and says, "For the earth has been defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the Toroth," that means instructions, "changed the law, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse shall consume the earth, and those who dwell in it be punished. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth shall be burned, and few men shall be left in it." Now that's describing what the prophet Yael also described, or Joel, and many other prophets described, the burning of the earth, the day of Yahuwah, the day of Yahuwah, when he visits us. Matthew 24, which is an end time discussion, says, Yahushua says, "The heaven and the earth shall pass away," no doubt from the burning, "but my words shall by no means pass away." Okay? They think that a lot of times that it's just what he was saying while he was in his body, but he's actually the one that was at Sinai giving the Torah. Something was lost, needing to be restored. Now, through lawless men's dialogue, the commandments have been altered. We're going to find out that actually, a lot of times, some of us have meditated on the fact that one or two of them have actually been not followed well. But I'm going to show you that there's actually 4 of them that have not been followed. And it happens to be the first 4. In 1 Timothy 1, it says, "Now the goal of this command is love, from a clean heart, from a good conscience, and a sincere belief, which some, having missed the goal, turned aside to senseless talk, wishing to be teachers of Torah, understanding neither what they say nor concerning what they strongly affirm." Now, it says in Matthew 24, "The heavens and the earth shall pass away, but my words shall by no means pass away." That's really important, because he said the 7th day was set apart in the commandment. And here is the retelling of the covenant for the lost tribes in the last days. "I am Yahuwah, your Elohim." There it is right there. Has that been changed? Yeah. "Who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You have no other mighty ones against my face." This commandment is lost because the identity was transferred to this person called Lord, which is the Hebrew Baal. We're not to even utter their names. Now, number 2, "You do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands, to those who love me and guard my commands." Lost? They've lost it because they put statues and obelisks up on their buildings. They have cruxes, which people don't even know what they are. They've been told what they are, but they're not really what they seem. Those are sun symbols. Now, number 3, "You do not cast," that's the Hebrew word nasa, to throw, "the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to ruin," shoah, which means to utterly lay waste. Yahuwah does not leave him unpunished who casts his name to ruin. Lost because the name is destroyed. Now, here's the 4th one. Does anybody recognize this commandment? Guard the Sabbath day to set it apart as Yahuwah, your Elohim, commanded you. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work. But the seventh day, that's the seventh day, is a Sabbath of Yahuwah, your Elohim. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates, so that your male servant and your female servant rest as you do. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuwah your Elohim brought you out from there by a strong hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore Yahuwah your Elohim commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. And this one was lost, under penalty of death, by the way. And it is the covenant sign between Yahuwah and his people forever. He sanctified or blessed, set apart, he kodeshed the seventh day. The day has been blessed. The fish, the birds, the people, and the day were the four blessings that he gave in the 7 days of creation. Well, 6 days of creation. But covenant sign. Okay. Now, notice Acts 1, verse 12, written 41 years after his ascension. Then they went back to Jerusalem, that is, after they saw him ascend, from the Mount of Olives, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey. In other words, there's a distance factor that you're properly able to travel. Now, we've lost the first 4 commandments. There's no way that somebody could say, oh, no, he knows who we mean, or it doesn't matter what day we assemble. Look, they misinterpret Hebrews 4. The enemy has usurped worship by tampering and turning Yahuwah's word into wormwood. Now, let's continue with the last 6. These have not been lost, but they've been ignored. Now, respect your father and your mother as Yahuwah your Elohim has commanded you, so that your days are prolonged and so that it is well with you on the soil which Yahuwah your Elohim has given you. Number 6, you do not murder. Number 7, you do not break wedlock. Number 8, you do not steal. Number 9, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Number 10, you do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor do you desire your neighbor's house, his field, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. Now, it says in the very next few verses, hear, listen, and obey. O Israel, Yahuwah, our Elohim, Yahuwah is one, and you shall love Yahuwah, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, and with all your might. And these words, which I am commanding you today, shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So any of the 10 words been lost? There was a parable in Luke 15, specifically verse 8. Yahushua's trying to teach them something about the commandments. He says, or what woman, that would be Israel, having 10 silver coins, having been given a treasure, being the 10 commandments, if she loses one coin, they hadn't lost the Sabbath back then, but they had lost one coin. The coin they lost was his name. They weren't allowed to say his name. They lost that coin back then. Does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it. Now, that's an interesting thing. Most people will pass over that, but actually, there's been more than one silver coin lost. I'm sure that most of you would agree that the first 4 have been lost. The very relationship that we have to identify who we serve. In Exodus 15:26, it says, and he said, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahuwah, your Elohim, and do what is right in his eyes, and shall listen to his commandments, and shall guard all his laws, I shall bring on you none of the diseases I brought on the Mizrites, for I am Yahuwah who heals you. Now, the Sabbath breach is, the word breach comes into mind because it's like a contract. There's a marriage. The Ten Commandments are the wedding vows, and we are married to the Creator when we join to Him through that covenant. It's a covenant of love, of hasid. Now, to change that covenant on our end of it is to breach the covenant, to breach it, to change it, to desolate it. It's kind of like the abomination of desolation. In Proverbs 3, starting at verse 5, it says, "Trust in Yahuwah with all your heart and lean not upon your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths." And that is an interesting thing too, because if you don't acknowledge Him in everything that you do, then He will not direct your paths. Now, how do you acknowledge Him? Well, you have to know Him. You have to know Him first, and then you can acknowledge Him before others. Well, in 1 Yehukanan, or 1 John 3, verse 4, the definition of sin is given to us. Everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Now, there's an illustration of just the words of the word Shabbath that we're talking about. The ancient Paleo-Hebrew, Shin Beth Ta, and Shin Beth Ta in the modern Aramaic script. It's just three letters, like the word Amin. But Shabbath means something. It's rooted in the word seven. We're going to see that. But, it's the seventh day. But it also means rest. Now, who is lying to us and deceiving the whole world? In Romans 6:16, it says that you're the servant of the one whom you obey. Okay? Now, that's a subtle deception because the serpent is teaching Sunday is the Sabbath and has for centuries, really since the 4th century. Now, in Ezekiel, or Yehezkel 20, starting at verse 19, it says, "I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. Walk in my laws and guard my right rulings and do them, and set apart my Sabbaths." They're His Sabbaths. "And they shall be a sign between me and you to know that I am Yahuwah, your Elohim." In 2 Thessalonians, it says in chapter 2, verses 9 through 12, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power and signs and wonders of falsehood, and with all the deceit of unrighteousness in those perishing, because they did not receive a love of the truth in order for them to be saved. And for this reason, Elohim sends them a working of delusion, for them to believe the falsehood, in order that all should be judged, who did not believe the truth, but have delighted in the unrighteousness." Now, look at the word Sabbath again with us. The word is reflected in about 108 languages on the earth, and here's a few of the prominent ones. The original Hebrew word identified in the word Sabbath is found in the Hebrew as Shabbath. It means to rest, to stop. The ancient Syriac is Sabbatho, Babylonian Sabbatu, Arabic Asabt. And it goes on and on. The Aramaic is a dialect of Hebrew, and it is Shabbata. Okay? Now, the Greek language does not have the word Sabbath, or this Shabbath as an origin. It has another word. It's Hemera, Khronu, the father of this deity. It's the father of Zeus. Well, they named that seventh day as the adversary did it, really, to defile the day. And we know that was done by the Romans, too, with some goat-legged man, and they call him a satyr. Well, anyway, the truth actually passes through 3 stages, and we're telling you the truth and how it sounds ridiculous. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed, even to the point of death. The truth was stamped out thoroughly in the Roman Empire. And under penalty of death, the Sabbath day was changed to the day of the sun. Now, the third stage of truth is it is accepted as being self-evident. So why is the Sabbath here? What's its purpose? Well, to recognize Yahuwah as creator. To rest as he rested from his works. That's what the commandment actually reveals to us. Now, it's also a sign between Yahuwah and his people so that there's a distinction made between one and the other. So that the messengers, when they come to reap, the reapers, when they reap the earth, they'll see the distinction between the two. And the third is to test to determine whether we're going to obey him or not. Now, it is a test, but it's interesting because it's the most simple thing of all to do. And it's not hard. It's like, what's hard about resting? You know. Mm-hmm. The manna that was given in the wilderness to the Israelites after they came out of Mitzrayim or Egypt, they had to recognize as a source of sustenance, but it was also the means by which Yahuwah tested them to see whether or not they would obey him. Exodus 16, verse 4 says, and this is truth now, and truth doesn't change like, oh, it's 100 years later now, we don't have to do that. That's not true anymore. Well, this is still true. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, I am raining bread from the heavens for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, in order to try them, that means test them, whether they walk in my Torah or not. Now that sounds, on its face, it sounds incomplete because it's like, well, if they go out and get the food, that's not like the test. The test involved whether they go out on the seventh day or not. If they go out on the seventh day, then they're not obeying him. See? Because he said no one is to go out of his place. Watch this. We're going to find that in just a couple of frames. Now, to enter into the truth, you have to receive the truth. You have to receive a love for the truth, and usually we call that immersion. We go through a type of stargate. The surface of the waters is a gateway, and it's when you turn your will over to the creator of the universe, and you are on another, in other words, your trajectory from that point on is not yours. It's not your will, it's his. And so wherever he's sending you, that's where you're going to be, and you like it. You just follow the tunnel. Now, I like that little Stargate thing. It's pretty good. And it illustrates immersion pretty well. Now, that word that you see right there, the Aleph and the Tav, that's what that is. The Aleph and the Tav, the beginning, the first and the last, the beginning and the ending. That's him. These words, there's two words. Atik Yomin. That means the Ancient of Days. That's who you're covenanting with. His name is Yahuwah. That is a title. Now, in Yahusha, or Joshua as they call him, he says, choose for yourselves this day whom you are going to serve. When you go to the waters of immersion, you're not going in there just to wash your sins away. You're going in there to become a combatant in a war. And you're actually turning your vessel over for his use so that he can walk the earth inside you and speak through you. That's what you're doing. But he's got to train you too. You can't just run around out there and have your own thoughts, Now, our battle is with a dragon. That's the enemy. He's the one that gives the horns their power and authority and sovereignty over the earth. That's why the earth is in such a mess. Daniel 7:24 and 25 says, and the 10 horns are 10 sovereigns from this reign. And they shall rise, and another shall rise after them, and it is different from the first ones. And it humbles 3 sovereigns, and it speaks words against the Most High. And it wears out the set-apart ones of the Most High, and it intends to change the appointed times and law. And they are given into its hand for a time and times and half a time. People focus on that, but they don't really look at the rest of the text, and they say, wait a minute, what's been going on here? Change the times. Well, that's what we're talking about. There's a contract breach. The appointed times that's referred to in this is another word for the festivals of Yahuwah. They're not holy days of obligation, according to the Catholics. That's another thing. That's the dragon. The dragon uses rulers like Constantine I, a sovereign who was an emperor, and he altered the appointed times and law. Now, here's some of the origins of the change, and I'm not going to belabor a lot of it. There's tons of this information on the internet, but who is it that changed the Sabbath to Sunday? Well, It certainly wasn't Yahuwah. And all of the denominations will give and attest to that fact. They'll say, no, they didn't. That wasn't not anything written in the ordinance at all. Keeping Sunday is not any problem at all. You can violate that anytime you want. That's the first day of the week. You can go back to work. Now, Matthew 12, verse 8, Yahusha says, for the son of Adam is the master of the Sabbath. Would that have been changed to something now being Sunday? No, it can't be. He can't be inconsistent. The scriptures are not inconsistent. So there's no wonder that Satan has attempted to overthrow the Sabbath day, because after all, he wants to be the master. Now, Malachi 3:6 also brings out a point. For I am Yahuwah, and I shall not change. And you, O sons of Yaakov, shall not come to an end. Now, he says he doesn't change. Why would he say this is a death penalty at one time and now it's not? Because see, working on the Sabbath carries the death penalty. In Yahusha's half-brother, James, or Yaakov, in chapter 1, verse 17, says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no change, nor shadow of turning. Now, here's how the Sabbath was changed. In the year 321, as we reckon time, Constantine instituted the observance of a day of rest dedicated to his sun deity, Apollo, known today as Sunday. And his historian, Eusebius, explains that. And all things that were duty to do on the Sabbath, these we have transferred to the Lord's day. That's Baal. And as more appropriately belong to it, because it has precedence and is first in rank. In other words, it's the first day of the week. And more honorable than the Jewish Sabbath. Who's talking? Is that your creator? 363, in the same century, just, not many years later, the Council of Laodicea decided it heretical and anathema for keeping Sabbath. They mean the real Sabbath. The council claimed Sabbath keeping was Judaizing. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's day. And if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ. Now, that means that Yahusha, Paul, and all other Nazarene were declared anathema because they were Sabbath keepers. Now, here's the Edict of Constantine in the year 321, a legal enactment by him. He reigned from 306 through 337. Quote, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not so suitable for grain sowing or for vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. And that was given in the third Roman month of 321 CE. Constantine is pictured right here on a coin with his sun deity. You can see the two of them together. The ancient Greek name for the first day of the week was Hemera, which means day, and then Heli, the day of the sun. Even in Greek, it meant that. And the ancient Greek name for the seventh day was, of course, we covered that. It's named after the sun deity, the father of Zeus. Now, Constantine established Sunday in the Edict of Constantine. Blind guides lead away from the Torah and they reject Yahuwah's word because they know that people will eagerly accept deceptions. They'll believe a lie faster than they will the truth. Now, the breach, we could look at it as the mystery of iniquity, which it certainly is. Iniquity being lawlessness. And the abomination of desolation of Torah. You're desolating Torah by wiping out 4 commandments? Now, quoted from a so-called pope during the time of Constantine's alteration. This is a guy that was obviously going along with it. His name was Sylvester, not Sylvester Stallone. And he was basically a man who lived between 314 and 337. Oddly enough, he lived his life, he died in the same year as Constantine, apparently. Now, he says this: if every Sunday is to be observed by Christians on account of the resurrection, in other words, that's the excuse that they gave, then every Sabbath, see, he's calling it the Sabbath, on account of the burial, is to be regarded an execration of the Yahudim. Now, twisting the intended meaning of words, we're going to look at that too in the translations. The term Lord's Day that you see in Revelation, the day of the Lord, it says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day. Well, it says, I came to be in the Spirit on the day of Yahuwah. That's what it really means. And I heard behind me a loud voice as of a trumpet. Now, the Greek that we have there is Kyriakos, and the word for day is Hamera in the Greek. But the day of the week, no, it isn't referring to the day of the week. What would that matter? We're talking about the day of Yahuwah. That's what we're really talking about, because that's what the book's about. It's about predicting the things that are about to come soon concerning the day of Yahuwah. That's what it is. It's Yahusha's revelation. Now, giving Scripture a twist, and we got a little help here from Chubby Checker up here. All right. Now, Peter wrote this in chapter 3. So then, beloved ones, looking forward to this, do your utmost to be found by him in peace, spotless and blameless, and reckon the patience of our Master as deliverance, as also our beloved brother Paul wrote to you according to the wisdom given to him, as also in all his letters, speaking in them concerning these matters, in which some are hard to understand, which those who are untaught and unstable twist to their own destruction, as they do also the other scriptures. So they twist the words. We see that they are intentionally doing this. Some are twisting them because they've just been taught that, but there was a day when some knew and they continued to twist them. Now, they have to really bend over backwards sometimes to prove their point. Now, here's the day or the period of time that Yahuchanan was really shown. It was the day of Yahuwah. And it involves seals, trumpets, and bowls. Okay? Now, in Isaiah, or Yeshayahu, the man we kept talking about earlier, that was sawn in half, and he, in chapter 13, starting at verse 6, he discusses the day of Yahuwah. How? For the day of Yahuwah is near. It comes as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore all hands go limp, every man's heart melts, and they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them. They are in pain as a woman in labor. They are amazed at one another, their faces aflame. See, the day of Yahuwah is coming, fierce with wrath and heat of displeasure, to lay the earth waste and destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations do not give off their light. The sun shall be dark at its rising, and the moon not send out its light. For I shall punish the world for its evil, and the wrong for their crookedness, and shall put an end to the arrogance of the proud, and lay low the pride of the ruthless. I shall make mortal man scarcer than fine gold, and mankind scarcer than the gold of Ophir. So I shall make the heavens tremble, and the earth shall shake from her place, in the wrath of Yahuwah of hosts, and in the day of the heat of his displeasure. Now this is discussed in many other places, among them being Matthew 24, Yael 1, 2, and 3, all three chapters, Yirmiyahu, or Jeremiah 30 and 46, Amos chapter 5, Zechariah 2, and chapter 14, and Malachi chapter 4. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, given to him at Horeb. Now all flesh will go limp on the great day of Yahuwah. That's what the book of Revelation is talking about. Zechariah 2:13 says something very interesting. Hush, all flesh before Yahuwah, for he has roused himself out of his set-apart dwelling. So be afraid. Be very afraid. Historical witnesses to the alteration of our behavior is one here, a writer from the year 460 named Sozomen. He's quoted as this: "Assemblies are not held in all congregations on the same time or manner. The people of Constantinople and almost everywhere assemble on the Sabbath as well as on the first day of the week, which custom is never observed at Rome or Alexandria." Apparently they wouldn't, because those were the center points of the new change. Alexandria is where in Egypt is where the catechetical school of Alexandria was located in that time, because it was established in the year 391. Now, he was writing in his book, The Ecclesiastical History. Now, here's an excerpt from the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine. The question is asked in the Catechism, which is the Sabbath day? The answer? Saturday is the Sabbath. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Circus in the Council of Laodicea, AD 336, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. What? And what was the prophecy in Daniel 7? He will seek to change times and law. Yahushua made the following statement concerning the end times in Matthew 24:20. Pray that your flight will not be in winter or on the Sabbath. Now the Hebrew root for it is Sheba, which means 7, and it's found to be the 7th day of the week. The word Shabua means week. It's based on the same thing. And Shabuoth is the plural, weeks. Now there's an Aramaic origin that's actually in this word. In Acts 20, verse 7 and 8, it says, "And on the first day of the week, the taught ones having gathered together to break bread, Paul, intending to depart the next day, was reasoning with them and was extending the word till midnight. And there were many lamps in the upper room where they were assembled." Now that's because it was the end of the Sabbath. This phrase, "on the first day of the week," is mia ton sabbaton. Now that's been misinterpreted in some cases because the word sabbaton is not Greek. It's actually an Aramaic, because it was transferred into the Greek because they didn't have a word like that. So they just used the word sabbaton. And the word sabbaton can mean a Sabbath, but it can also mean a Sabbath cycle of 7 days, which that says the first of the Sabbaton, the first of the Sabbath cycle. That's what it's really talking about, because it's an Aramaic understanding, not just the Hebrew. And that's where a lot of teachers don't press far enough into the research to understand there was a distinction in the Aramaic. So this is another indication that it wasn't inspired in Greek. Why would they use that word? It's Aramaic. Translated from Aramaic into Greek and then English, all of these phrases are found to be on the same day. Mark 16:2 says, "And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre and at the rising of the sun." Now, the word week there is the word sabbaton, the Aramaic word. It's a Sabbath cycle. It's the first of the Sabbath cycle. Luke 24:1 is speaking of the same thing in the same phrase, and it says the same words. And it was all on the same day, all of these. "And on the very first day of the week at early dawn, they came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared." And Yahuchanan, or John 20, and on the first day of the week, Miriam and Magdala came to the tomb. And of course in John 20, it says, "When therefore it was evening on that day, the first day of the week," it was later in the day when, it was the first day of the week. "And Yahushua came to them and stood in their midst." This was the day, the time of his resurrection, And that's the reason that they give for changing the Sabbath. That's not a legitimate reason, though. So the word mia in Greek means one. A lot of times they say first, but the proper word in Greek for first is protos. It doesn't say protos, it says mia. And then ton is just an article. It means the or that. It's pointing to something. And then the Sabbaton is written in the Greek, but it's an Aramaic word. It's not even it's rooted in the Hebrew, but anyway, on the first day of the week, the taught ones having gathered together to break bread, that was an after Sabbath gathering, because they were in their place on the Sabbath. They didn't go out. They went out after the Sabbath as the sun was setting, and they got together because Paul was going to leave the next day. We're not commanded to have a meal after the Sabbath, but that's what they did, And there were many lamps in the upper room. That means it was dark. He didn't get together on Sunday morning and then talk until midnight. That's not happening. It was after dark, and he was talking probably for, 5-6 hours, because it was night, and the day started at sunset, The Sabbath is based in reality, not religion. It's a covenant sign forever. And the week itself is like a heartbeat of creation, and it points to the Sabbath. Hebrews 4 tells us to enter that rest. The languages of the earth that we talked about reflect the Hebrew root for the seventh day. Now, Adrian Rogers said something interesting. He said, it's better to be divided by truth than to be united in error. That kind of reflects back to the other guy. There's always going to be dissenting dissemblers because Satan has enthroned himself in the highest position of power on earth. And he dissembles through a network under a man that goes by the title Holy Father. How blasphemous. There is a little horn of the fourth beast, and he's given great power and authority by the dragon. It's a political monstrosity that's in disguise, posing in plain sight as a global religious institution, but it's really political. The false prophet is the little horn's fruit. The Inquisition. The Inquisition is the false prophet's fruit. What is the Inquisition? A 600-year extermination of those that did not obey. It makes Nero look like, a Boy Scout. You know what I mean? 600 years the dragon was persecuting and killing people. Now, in 1981, this man that we see today in that position was Joseph Ratzinger, and he was appointed the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. This is the title that replaced the former one, because the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith is the new name for the old Inquisition. It's the same institution, it's just given a new name. And they're really good at renaming themselves. And his title, the prefect of this congregation or Inquisition, is the Grand Inquisitor. He's the one that enforces the doctrines of the faith. Uh-oh. Now, what are we expected to do on the Sabbath day? These guys are saying resting, resting, resting. Oh, well, that's what we're supposed to do. That's it. Now, Exodus 16, verses 29 and 30 says, see, because Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath, therefore he is giving you bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Let each one stay in his place. Do not let anyone go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. There you are. Don't have to look any further. Where do we observe the Sabbath day? Is there a place we have to go? No. Leviticus or Vayikra 23 says, 6 days work is done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath of rest, a Kodesh Mikra, which means a set-apart calling. Now, you do no work. It is a Sabbath to Yahuwah in all your dwellings. That's how you're going to be able to find time to teach your children, because you're not taking them somewhere else to have someone else teach your children. You're teaching your children. Now, it is true that when Gentiles don't have parents that taught them the Torah, they have to go somewhere and learn. So they had synagogues set up. And synagogues are not buildings. It's not a building. Synagogue is the Greek word that means the congregation. It's the people themselves. Now, It's those who study the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, primarily consisting of outsiders that are turning to Yahuwah, and their parents had never taught them. So the need to teach them is necessary. But you can do that under a tree or by a little creek, or you can get together in your neighborhood, you know. But driving 60 miles, I don't think so. Not according to Acts 1, verse 12. Now, it takes wisdom, because there's a riddle involved here. A riddle is revealed by obeying the fourth commandment. When you obey the commandment, you can solve the riddle. Those not familiar with wisdom, which is Torah, cannot discern the mark of the beast, because the mark of the beast is given as a riddle. Psalm 25:14 says, "The secret of Yahuwah is with those who fear him, and he makes his covenant known to them." Psalm 111:10 says, "The fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom, and those doing them," wisdom being them, the commandments, have a good understanding, and his praise is standing forever." And Yeshayahu, the one that they sawed in half, says in chapter 51, verse 7, "Listen to me, you who know righteousness, a people in whose heart is my Torah. Do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their revilings." Now, those who cannot buy and sell do not have the mark of the beast, because they rest each Sabbath day, neither transacting business nor toiling to earn money. The text does not say that the beast system won't let them buy and sell. It simply declares those who don't have the mark cannot buy and sell. It's a riddle, and riddles are mind games meant to conceal information from those who are blind. Now, watch this. Here's a riddle. What two coins add up to 30 cents, and one of them is not a nickel? This is the same kind of riddle that we just heard. This coin riddle is similar to the riddle at Revelation 13. You have to look at the elements given. Yahuwah's Torah is wisdom, and having wisdom, it will enable his servants to solve the riddle of the mark of the beast. Those unable to buy and sell do not have the mark of the beast, because they have the mark of Yahuwah, his Sabbath. Those obeying Yahuwah rest on every Sabbath and do not engage in commerce, because they obey Yahuwah. Those not obeying Yahuwah are those who have the mark of the beast system, and their behavior, buying and selling on the Sabbath, marks them clearly. The sign or mark between Yahuwah and his servants is the sign of the everlasting covenant, his Sabbath. Read Exodus 31:13 through 17, and Ezekiel 20:12 through 20. The two coins that add up to 30 cents, and one of them is not a nickel, it's right there in front of you. Because they're mind games, and they're just meant to conceal through words the information from those who are blind. The mark of authority is proclaimed by the little horn itself, given power by the dragon. From the office of Cardinal Gibbons, it's written in 1895 in November, from the office of the cardinal. Of course, the Catholic circus claims that the change, that's of the Sabbath to Sunday, was her act. And the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical power. Now, Exodus 20 is more wisdom. You do not bow to them nor serve them. And this picture shows them kneeling down, praying to a statue of one of their popes. Now, here's a quote from the Catholic Record of London, Ontario, in 1923. Sunday is our mark of authority. The circus is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. Do not add to it nor take away from it. Yahuwah has given us the commandment to guard and obey all these words, and he says don't even think of changing them. How do these nations serve their mighty ones? Let me do more so too. And he says, don't learn their ways. He says, all the words that I am commanding you to guard to do it, do not add or take away. Now, there's one law, not two, and there's only one body, not two. Numbers 15 says, one law is for you of the assembly and for the stranger who sojourns with you. a law forever throughout your generations. As you are, so is the stranger before Yahuwah. One Torah and one right ruling is for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you. There's no replacement theology possible, you know. In 1 Corinthians 1, verse 10, it says, "And I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of our Master Yahushua Messiah, that you all agree, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be knit together in the same mind and in the same opinion." Now, here's where it says we will be called the repairers of the breach of the covenant, okay? Not Serene, the followers of Yahushua, the restorers of the covenant. Yeshayahu, the guy they sawed in half. In chapter 58, after verse 1 says, "Lift up your voice like a trumpet and declare to my people their transgression." Well, that grabbed me too. I said, "Oh, what? You mean I'm supposed to tell them about what they're doing wrong?" Well, that's what I'm doing. But Yeshayahu did it too, and it got him in big trouble. In verse 12 of chapter 58, it says, "And those from among you shall build the old waste places." Now, this is spiritual language. These are abstractions, but they can be concrete and abstract. "You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in." Yirmiyahu 6, verse 16 says, "Thus said Yahuwah, stand in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for yourselves." But they said, "We do not walk in it." There's that word rest. Well, let's compare that with Hebrews 4 real quick. Is there another day, or is it the seventh day? Is it talking about the seventh day? Let's look. Hebrews 4:1 says, "Therefore, since a promise remains of entering into his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. For indeed the good news, which is his covenant, was brought to us as well as to them, but the word which they heard did not profit them, not having been mixed with belief in those who heard it. But we who have believed do enter into that rest, as he said, as I swore in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest. And yet his works have come into being from the foundation of the world. For somewhere he has said this about the seventh day." About the seventh day? You mean these are not spiritual? No, he's talking about real stuff here. "And Elohim rested on the seventh day from all his works. And in this again, if they shall enter into my rest. Since then it remains for some to enter into it, and those who formerly received the good news," that would be the covenant 10 commandments, "did not enter in because of disobedience." He again defines a certain day, today, saying through Daud, so much later, as it has been said, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Yahushua had given them rest, he would have not spoken of another day after that." See, this is prophetic too, because he knew there was going to be a change. "So there remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Elohim. For the one, having entered into his rest, has himself also rested from his works, as Elohim rested from his own. Let us therefore do our utmost to enter into that rest, lest anyone fall after the same example of disobedience." Disobedience to what? The covenant. Yes, sir.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
You're speaking of literal Sabbath keeping.
That's correct.
But
The test. It's the test.
but entering into the rest for the new covenant people, would that not mean the Sabbath rest, peace, and joy beyond the keeping of the day, but just the peace in our hearts?
Oh, yes, indeed, but not at the supplanting of the commandment. Certainly not.
Is the commandment precedes the law?
Yes, the commandment of the Sabbath does precede the giving of the Torah, because it was given in the book of what they call Genesis, or Bereshith. And that is a thing that Yahuwah did to set apart the day. He blessed it. Yeah. Now, if we notice Exodus 31 here, starting at verse 15, there's a big similarity with Hebrews 4. 6 days' work is done, and on the seventh is a Sabbath of rest, set apart to Yahuwah. Everyone doing work on the Sabbath day shall certainly be put to death. And the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever. For in 6 days Yahuwah made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Now, you have to understand, they were to be executed then, but if they aren't executed by ignoring the Sabbath, the reapers are going to find you, and then you will be executed. There's going to be recompense. There remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Elohim. There aren't two bodies. There's only one. It's kind of scary. And it is very exclusive and very discriminating. There is a solemn Sabbath, too, that is above all Sabbaths. It's a Sabbath of Sabbaths. And it's referred to in the book of Acts. In Acts 27, verses 9 and 10, it says, "And much time having passed, and the sailing now being dangerous, because the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, 'Men, I see that this voyage is going to end with damage and great loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives.'" See, this is the day that he's really talking about, is Yom Kippur, which is a Sabbath of Sabbaths. It's the 10th day of the 7th moon in the Hebrew calendar. Now, if we hold fast, not the idea of fasting from afflicting your being, but if we cling to, in a strong way, to Yahuwah's covenant, this involves the sign of the Sabbath, if you're going to do it. Yeshayahu, again, the guy they sawed in half in 56, says this, starting at verse 2. "Blessed is the man who does this, and the Son of Man who lays hold on it, guarding the Sabbath, lest he profane it, and guarding his hand from doing any evil. And let not the son of the foreigner who has joined himself to Yahuwah speak, saying, Yahuwah has certainly separated me from his people. Nor let the eunuch say, Look, I am a dry tree. For thus said Yahuwah to the eunuchs who guard my Sabbaths, and have chosen what pleases me, and hold fast to my covenant. To them I shall give in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off. Also the sons of the foreigners who join themselves to Yahuwah to serve him and to love the name of Yahuwah, to be his servants, all who guard the Sabbath and not profane it, and hold fast to my covenant. Them I shall bring to my set-apart mountain, and let them rejoice in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their slaughterings are accepted on my altar. For my house is called the house of prayer for all the peoples." Now here's two verses to bear in mind. Matthew 5, verse 17 through 19. "Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly I say to you, till the heavens and the earth pass away, one yod or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men so shall be called least in the reign of the heavens. But whoever does and teaches them shall be called great in the reign of the heavens." And remember, the guy they called Joshua, in verse 8 of his first chapter says, "Do not let this book of the Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely." And here's, I'm going to wrap it up with this. Revelation 22, which is the very end of the book of Revelation, says in verse 13, "I am the Aleph and the Tau, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all who love and do falsehood. So choose this day whom you are going to serve." Our commission as Nazarene guardians of the covenant and the name, are to listen to our leader, Yahusha. He says, go and make taught ones of all the nations, immersing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the set-apart Spirit, teaching them to guard all that I have commanded you. And see, I am with you always until the end of the age. Amen. Now, here's another ending I want to add to this. When the prophet they sought in half, Isaiah or Yeshayahu, he was inspired to ask this question: who has believed our report? Well, when the righteous are standing around in the millennium, and they're wearing their white robes and they're serving Yahuwah and keeping his commandments, and they have the right to the tree of life, at some point we can walk up to Yahusha and we can say, here they are. They're covered by your blood, and they believed in your word, and they obeyed your commandments, and you died for their sins. And we can ask him, was it worth it? And he'll say, Amen. Absolutely.